Today, Armchair Bikers. Guess what we got? CF Moto Papio 125, Honda GROM 125. We bought this with our own money. We bought this with our own money, okay? Does this Papio kill this GROM? I don't know. We're gonna find out.
Alright, everybody, it is the bearded stick. We're on the CF Moto Papio. It's my first time riding it. Got Boomer Buzz over there on the GROM. He's going to be following me. He has got 135 miles on this bike. I have none, so I'm going to test it out, see how it compares to the GROM, because I have about 2,000 miles on that GROM. So 2124, there you go. So I got 2,000 miles on the GROM, so I am well acquainted with that machine. We're gonna see how this compares. This is, once again, CF Moto. It's a Chinese company. Chinese bikes do have the stigma of being cheap or not feeling as refined as the Japanese bikes. But I'm gonna remain unbiased and see what it's all about. So let's go. Interesting thing about this bike is that it's a 6-speed. And for the 2022 Honda GROM, they came out with the updated motor that has the oil filter and the 5-speed. The CF Moto has got a 6-speed, so first gear is pretty low as far as I can tell. And I am in 5th gear, doing 41 miles an hour according to this speedometer. However, this speedometer does read a little fast, as we've kind of already figured out with the Honda GROM compared to it. Yeah, I think it's about 2 to 3 miles off from the Honda GROM. The Honda GROM's pretty close. I think the GROM might be a little off if you actually checked it with the GPS, but it's pretty close. But regardless, this is going to read a little fast. But yeah, the gears are short, so it makes sense as to why there's 6 of them, because I'm in 6th gear right now, and it's still pulling some of these mild hills that we're going up at 45 miles an hour according to the speedometer. But positioning feels good. The tank's pretty smooth. That's one thing that I didn't like about the older generation GROMs, is that the tank had these plastic panels that would stick out and kind of obstruct your knees, especially if you had longer legs. So what's cool about this is that this is pretty smooth and doesn't really obtrude into your legs as much. But in terms of the switch gear and the overall feel of the bike, it honestly does not feel like a Chinese motorcycle, because once again, Chinese stuff has the stigma of being very cheap, and there are a lot of cheap Chinese motorcycles out there. But I think this is probably, in terms of Chinese manufacturing, this is the closest I've seen anything come to a Japanese product. The switchgear feels nice. The seating position is nice. You look down at your instrument panel here, and the overall cockpit doesn't seem cheap or slapped together or stuck together with hot glue. But cruising along here, once again, 50 miles an hour, revving about 6,500 RPM, and it feels good. The seat on this compared to the 2022 GROM is a little slanted forward, so you do maybe slide forward on the seat a little bit. The GROM, the new generation GROM, does have a very flat seat, which I personally like. I don't like when these small bikes have a cutout in the seat, because you don't really need it, and it sort of forces you to sit in one position. I like to be able to move around on the bike, but what's cool is that this bike does not have a cutout on it. It's just kind of raked forward, so even though you do slide a little forward, you do have plenty of room to scooch back. From the factory, it does come with a strap for the passenger to hang on to, but we removed that because that strap is like right where you want to sit, and it's a little uncomfortable sitting on that little nylon strap they put across the seat. So pretty easy to do, just 2 bolts underneath the bottom side of the seat. Bike sounds good, exhaust sounds good, no rattles, no creaks. Flicks back and forth very easily, and it's smooth too. The handlebars don't vibrate. We're getting up close to 7,000 RPMs and there's no vibrations. The mirrors are actually very nice. They're a little weird looking, but there's no vibration in the mirrors. I can see Boomer Buzz back there pretty clearly on that bike of his. Once again, this is all off the cuff kind of first impressions. I've not ridden this bike before, so this is not going to be the most refined commentary ever, but this is my initial reaction to the bike. So pretty cool so far. I am impressed. And it's really been a while since anybody's come out with anything to compete with the GROM. You had Kawasaki come out with their Z125 a while ago, which we had one of those, and well, it was a great bike. I liked it. I wasn't a big fan of the ergonomics on that bike. I felt like you sat up really high, like on top of the bike, rather than sort of in the bike. So I wasn't personally a fan of the ergonomics on that bike, but other than that, I mean, nothing to complain about in terms of the way the bike rode and the performance of that bike. We also had products from Kymco. We had a Kymco K-pipe. We had a Kymco Spade. So we put a lot of miles on all those bikes. So a pretty good knowledge base in terms of the mini motos and comparing different manufacturers to maybe the more well-known Honda GROM. Yeah, the first generation of the K-pipe had reverse shifter linkage that made all the gears down instead of up. So it was MotoGP style, then they recalled it, and then of course changed it like the next model year after. The Kymco Spade was a 150, so that had a pretty good amount of power, and that could get up to 70 miles an hour pretty easily, so a little bit different than these bikes. We also had a Benelli TNT 135. That's an Italian manufacturer that's not really very well known, but that was a upright cylinder 135cc mini moto that was very similar in ergonomics and geometry to the GROM. And that was a pretty fun bike to ride as well. It did feel a little cheap in terms of like the controls and the dash and things like that, but it looked really cool. And once again, it, you know, sounded pretty good, performed good. It's kind of hard to go wrong with these single-cylinder mini motorcycles. They're just so simple, so basic that they're almost all fun to ride. Unless you go super cheap and buy like a $1,200 Chinese scooter, which is still fun to ride, but who knows how long it's going to last.
Okay, armchair bikers, Boomer Buzz, and we're back from our test on the CF Moto, and look at that, 243.2 miles. Something I wanted to go over with you and maybe give my opinion, because I know the bearded stick gave you his opinion while I was riding last night. We went up north to a town called Ticonderoga in New York. Great back roads, fantastic riding, and we were 65, tucking in, maybe 68 on a little downhill, 70 on a downhill, both of us tucked in behind each other. The bike is, like I said, fantastic. CF Moto did a fantastic job on this bike. So I'm going to start basically from the front here. The switches feel good. They don't feel cheap. Clutch feels good. Mirrors look a little awkward, but they a little weird, but they work great. You can see behind you. You don't have to tuck your shoulder in too much. You've got a perfect view. So I'm impressed with that. The headlight is fantastic. It's been a problem with some of these mini motos, is the headlight just when you're going straight down the road, it lights it up. When you start going into curves, it sort of disappears a little bit. So the high beam works good. Headlight I'm really impressed with, because I'm Boomer Buzz and I'm getting old, and my nighttime eyesight is probably lost a little bit. So headlight is excellent. Forks, suspension are good. I'm really happy with the way they stiffened up the front forks. The rear shock has a little 5-spanner adjustable like back in the day, and it's set on 2. I'm heavier. The bearded stick is lighter, so he probably didn't even notice that, because I think he's like 55 pounds. They put a little beefier chain on it than the GROMs do. So it has not even really stretched that much in 200 and some odd miles. You can see it down there, which on the GROMs, generally your first couple rides, the thing just stretches real quick and you got to adjust it a couple times. I'm going to do an oil change on it. I don't have a filter yet for it, so I'm going to think about getting a filter. It does have a filter, 125cc upright cylinder filter right there, and it does have a screen on the bottom, like a drain bolt with a screen on it. Sort of reminds me of my Van 200. So that has the same deal, filter right here, and then you have a drain bolt with like a 3-bolted screen on it. So that is reminiscent of the Van 200 engine. Tires are decent, probably cheaper tires like the V rubbers they put on the ground. Directionals are bright, taillights bright. 4-ways are neat. You got 4-ways on it, which is pretty cool. Again, the instrument cluster just gives you your basics. Nothing spectacular, but it is pretty neat. Cool thing I found out about the display here. So when you toggle through, it gives you trip meter, it gives you voltage, and then it gives you a way to make the display brighter. So 1 is there, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you get 5 settings on the brightness of the display, which is really nice. And I'm averaging about 80 miles to a gallon, I think, the first couple tanks. And I put about a gallon in each time, about 80 and 85 miles, maybe 90. I don't know. I haven't looked at the owner's manual to see what size the tank is, so that is my fault. We've had a lot of these bikes. We've had the Kimco K-Pipe. We've had the Kimco Spade, all with 4,000, 4,500 miles on it. We've got a 2019 GROM with 4,600 miles on it. We've got the 2022 GROMs, and I've got 1,400 on mine. He said last night 2,100, something like that. So standing in that park yesterday, asking the question, is this a GROM killer? My answer is not a GROM killer. The Honda GROM is basically, you know, the pinnacle of mini moto. They have got it refined, 3 generations of it, probably since what, 2014, I think. But CF Moto is putting out a good quality bike, well worth the money. Again, it depends on what your dealer is doing markup wise. I know they're marking up GROMs, they're marking up CT Trail 125s, they're marking up Super Cubs, they're marking up Monkeys. Even if you can get them, you know, they get one in here and there. So hopefully you guys can find a CF Moto dealer. Again, the dealer we're talking with, plenty of parts, plenty of bikes, and they've been a CF Moto dealer for many years with their ATVs, side-by-sides, and really impressed with them. We bought this to try to get people into the whole mini moto stuff, motorcycling. It's a great way to get started in motorcycling. It's a great way to have fun. It's a great way if you've been riding for 40 years, 50 years like me. It's a great way to just have some fun. I go out with my kid, we ride around, we laugh the whole time, we have a great time. So again, not a GROM killer, but I rode 100 and some odd miles last night. It was comfortable, the mirrors work great, the lights work great, it shifts great. It keeps up miles wise, speed wise, acceleration as it breaks in is getting better. Again, it's only got 246 miles on it, so, and I'm running along with the GROM. It's got 2,000 miles on it, so well broken, multiple oil changes, all that stuff. So we will keep testing this, keep taking it out, and again, CF Moto, great job. Another great addition to the mini moto market. And to reiterate, I probably repeated myself a few times, but you know, if you can't afford a new one, try to find a used one. And there's a bunch of great mini motos out there. The Benelli, the Kimco, the Z125, all those. Go out, look for one, get one. Great on gas, especially in today's economy. A lot of fun, and we ride these all year round. We ride them on the salty roads, and as long as you're careful and you go out, you can have a ball with these little bikes.
Hi, that's Mr. Pappy. We're going for a ride.